What is going on, everyone? Hockey Time here, back for another week of NHL Power Rankings. This is the third to last Power Rankings of the NHL regular season. Kind of weird to think that we're already this close to the end of the regular season, but it's the most exciting time of the year, no question about it. Already today, games again that don't happen to, have any effect on this ranking, but a banger of a game between Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay, which we'll talk about in the recap. But nonetheless, best time of the year, far and away for the NHL. So let's jump right into it. Again, third to last one of these for the regular season, and some things really don't change all that much at number 32. It is the San Jose Sharks. This team just, it is what it is at this point, man, right? Like, they're probably going to finish last in the league. They're probably looking at the best odds to get Macklin Celebrini. So good stuff there for them. 1-2 on the week. 1-8-1 in their last 10. They stick at number 32. Number 31 does not change either. It is still Anaheim. They go 1-3 on the week. 2-7-1 in their last 10. So a slight edge over San Jose in that aspect, but neither of these teams have been all that good. Leo Carlson scored a nice goal last night, though, so at least they have that going for them. Number 30, this team actually dropping 2 spots from last week, 1-2 on the week, 4-4-2 in their last 10, but I don't really like a ton of what I've seen from Montreal, and I felt like teams just ahead of them deserve to be just ahead of them, so they fall a couple spots this week. Again, they kind of are what they are at this point. They've been competitive in most of their games, as they have been pretty much all year, but lately just haven't really liked what I've been seeing from them. The goaltending's been kind of hit or miss, which, again, same theme it's been all year for them, but lately just not quite doing enough to keep them in games, so they fall a few spots here to number 30. Number 29, this is actually the same spot they were at last week in Chicago. 1-1 on the week, 5-5 in their last 10. One of their better stretches of the season, actually, with that 5-5 in their last 10 record. So good stuff from Chicago, just not quite enough to get them to move up above the teams ahead of them, but generally not overly disappointed with what I've seen from this Chicago team as they look to wrap up their regular season. 28, and this team drops 1 spot. They've had a rough end to the season here. 1-2 on the week, 3-7 in their last 10. That's Calgary. This is a team that not all that long ago we were talking about that still had a playoff chance, despite the fact that they sold off a ton of their assets. And at this point, it's very clear that those assets are being missed, despite still having Jacob Markstrom. The lack of defensive prowess that these guys have, just the lack of overall offensive depth that they have, their star players not really living up to the expectations heading into the season, all compiled to this mess that has been Calgary's regular season. And I'm certain we'll see some movement from them in the offseason. What that is, obviously to be determined, but for now, a rough week drops them 1 spot to number 28. Number 27, a team that doesn't really climb all that often, but they climb up 3 spots this week, 2-1 on the week, 3-6-1 in their last 10. And they've actually been doing a decent little job at trying to play spoiler. It's Columbus. They've been doing a good job at, like Montreal, keeping a lot of their games competitive. A lot of it this week, especially, was thanks to the goaltenders. They both had some fantastic numbers this week, just keeping Columbus in games that they really had no business staying in. But good to see that from the likes of the Neil Tarasov and Jet Greaves for the Blue Jackets. Again, they probably don't want the points as an organization. They would probably rather be closer to Celebrini, but from the fans' perspective, from the coach's perspective, from the players' perspective, all good stuff there. So good to see from Columbus that they still have some life in them, despite the fact that their season's been over for quite a while now. Number 26, and this team drops 1 spot, 1-2 on the week, but 6-4-0 in their last 10 is Arizona. Teams kind of just leapfrogging them is the reason they dropped a spot here. Not really a bad week for them, I thought. They have a really good effort last night against Vegas, despite being down 4-1 headed into the third. I thought their games really over the last 2 weeks have been pretty good. They get the big deal with the rink figured out. So good to see that. Hopefully that ends up being successful in the coming years and provides a good, stable home for the Yotes. It's an organization that I think should be in Arizona. There's going to end up being a team in Arizona one way or another. It's a big enough market that it should be able to sustain. So happy to see that from them. It's a good week from that perspective. The on-ice stuff just wasn't nearly as good as it could have been, but definitely could have been worse. Number 25, this is a team that takes a good little tumble, 0-2 on the week and 4-6 in their last 10. This is the Devils. The Devils, for a while here, had been in the mix in the playoffs and just found a way to cough away games over and over and over again, to the point now where they need a true miracle to make it in the playoffs in the last 5-6 games of the year. And with the likes of Pittsburgh playing pretty well, Washington still maintaining their 82 points despite losing a lot. The Islanders playing well. Philadelphia still trying to scrap out points. I just don't see this team making it in. And they, by not winning, are not doing themselves any favors, of course. So a rough week for New Jersey, a rough last month for New Jersey in general, sees them fall 4 spots here to number 25. Um, Into the next row here, number 24, this team drops one spot, 1-2 on the week as well. It's Ottawa. Seemed kind of back and forth. They had one real strong game this week, and the other two just didn't look all that great. Korpisalo epitomizes that more than maybe anybody. He has a fantastic game, and then the next night just doesn't look like an NHL ready goaltender, which has been the case for him a lot of the year, which is extremely frustrating, I'm sure, for all you Sens fans, but kind of is what it is at this point. I'd be curious to see if they even attempt to try to move that contract in the offseason. It's a big one. I don't know that they'll be able to get it done, but I don't think that their plan is to really move forward with him as like the number one guy. But again, whether or not they're able to do anything in the offseason with Jonas, kind of hard to say. Regardless, though, they drop one spot here to number 24. Number 23, flip-flopping spots with them is Seattle. Seattle goes 2-2 on the week, 4-5-1 in their last 10, officially eliminated from playoff contention recently here. But they've been still fighting out the stretch here towards the end of the year, which is good to see from them. Some good games, excuse me, from the likes of Shane Wright and Matty Beniers, which is great to see. Those are two of their young, maybe core franchise guys for this organization. Obviously, Matty Beniers is that. Whether or not Shane Wright is still that, kind of to be determined, but looked good in the performances he had. So good to see that for the Kraken organization this week. Again, just good enough to flip-flop here with Ottawa and move up the one spot to number 23. Number 22, not moving at all, is Buffalo. Buffalo went 2-1 on the week. Similar story here to Columbus. I don't know that I see them squeaking in. They're still there mathematically. It could happen, but I think their role is more of trying to play spoiler, and they very much do it against Philadelphia after the Islanders win last night. They are now, or excuse me, the Flyers loss, the Islanders win, and the Pittsburgh win today. That, again, does not affect this ranking. Philly is out of a playoff spot. They do play Columbus tonight, so we'll see if Columbus can continue to play spoiler or not. But that win for Buffalo over Philly played a huge role in Philadelphia now being out of the playoffs for the time being as I'm recording this 5 o'clock on Saturday the 6th. So we'll see what happens for the Sabres. Again, I would be very surprised if they find a way to sneak in, but they've been playing pretty well. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has been phenomenal over the latter half of the year, which is really good to see for him personally, and of course for the organization. Makes it very interesting to see what they do with Devin Levi headed into next year. But in general, it's been good stuff for the Sabres, just not quite good enough for me to move them this week, so they sit tight at number 22. Number 21, aforementioned Philadelphia Flyers. They go 0-2-1 on the week, 2-5-3 in their last 10. A team that is fighting for a playoff spot, fighting for their playoff lives. 2-5-3 over a stretch heading into the playoffs is mind blowing, frankly. Like, I don't know. I mean, the biggest problem is goaltending. Let's not beat around the bush here, but just like the will to win, the will to finish doesn't seem there for them. They outshoot most of the teams they play, especially lately, like 40 plus shots relatively frequently. And they're just not getting the goal scoring and, of course, not getting a ton of goaltending support. Even with Ivan Fedotov, he did not have a good night against Buffalo the other night. So a tough week for sure for Philly. Will be interesting to see if they can now fight their way back into that playoff spot. Again, a team in Columbus they're playing tonight that they should be able to beat, but we'll see whether they have the will to get it done. So a rough week for Philly sees them drop to number 21. Number 20, another team not moving, and they go 1-1-1 on the week, is Detroit. They're still not out of it with regard to the playoffs. They do need to get some more wins there, just I think a point behind the likes of Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and the Islanders. So we'll see if they can drag themselves up in the standings to get into the mix. For now, again, just outside that, 1-1-1 is not going to be enough to get done. They only have, I think, 5 games left to go, so they got to get the points racked up as much as they can over those 5 games and hope that the teams in front of them don't win as many games as they do, of course. So we'll see what happens for Detroit. Kind of an iffy week, they say, at number 20. Now, number 19, another team in this Eastern Conference mix that had a rough week and has had a rough stretch is Washington. Washington 0-3-1 on the week, 4-5-1 in their last 10, and losing that massive game on Thursday to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then Friday, a shot at redemption. Their goalie, Darcy Kemper, stands on his head, stops like 41 shots, I think, and they throw the game away in the third period. They were up 2 after the first, up 1 at the end of the second, and just give Carolina the game at the end there with the power play. So tough week from Washington. They, of course, are now out of the playoffs, at least for the time being as well. They still have some games that they can make up points in, but it's been really, really tough for both Washington and for Philadelphia of late. We'll see whether or not they're able to crawl back in, but those two teams in particular, the two duds of the East as far as the teams in the playoff mix right now. Number 18, And this has been the Cinderella of the team involved in the playoff mix. They're up 8 spots from last week. The Pittsburgh Penguins 3-0-1 on the week, 6-2-2 in their last 10, and they suddenly look completely revitalized. Sidney Crosby is just like single-handedly grabbing every one of his teammates by the shoulders and trying to lift them over that playoff line. He's been playing unbelievable. Alex Nedeljkovic in Tristan Jarry's absence with his injury has been phenomenal, keeping them in a ton of these games. Just really those two guys alone trying to carry the Pittsburgh Penguins into the playoffs. And as of, again, recording this right now, that's where they're at. So phenomenal stuff from those two in particular. Of course, they've had some other guys helping them out. That team in general has been playing pretty well, but those two names in particular, far and above the rest on this Penguins team. So good to see that for them. This was a team I think I had making the playoffs going into it, and it was pretty surprising to see how badly they performed, especially in the middle of the year here. So good to see them pick it back up. We'll see whether or not they can make it in this week, up 8 spots to number 18. Number 17, this team drops 1 spot. Another team going 1-1-1 on the week are the Minnesota Wild. This is another team that it doesn't really matter how well they play down the stretch. They're going to need to get extraordinarily lucky to make the playoffs. And I think there's a chance they could actually be eliminated today, depending on how the games go. I'd have to double check that. But in general, they need more of a miracle than even a team like New Jersey does to make it in. Nashville, Los Angeles, and Vegas have all been playing pretty strongly, unlike the East, where the teams are just like trying to give each other the last wild card spot. So a tough break from Minnesota. I felt like they've had a decent latter half of the year, but of course, just too little too late at this point. It would, again, take a miracle for them to get in, despite some of the positives they'd had over the past couple weeks. So they dropped 1 spot to number 17. Number 16, another team in a similar spot to them, just ahead of them in the Western Conference race, is St. Louis. St. Louis did go 1-2 on the week versus 1-1-1, but 6-3-1 in their last 10. Again, just too little too late for them at this point. The Western Conference teams that are in that last few playoff spots are just way stronger than the last few teams in the East. Of St. Louis was an Eastern Conference team, they would probably be making it in. I think they have 85 points right now. The teams in the bubble out east have like 83, but of course Nashville, Vegas, LA, all floating around that like 91 to 93 number. So going to need to get very, very lucky to sneak in if you're a Blues fan. But this week they dropped the 1 spot to number 16. At number 15, the team moving up 4 spots, the New York Islanders, the other of the two teams in the East that are actually seeming to be interested in making the playoffs, aside from Pittsburgh here. 3-1 on the week, 5-5 in their last 10. Really have picked it up in this week, have kind of re-lifted themselves back into the mix out east. So we'll see, like Pittsburgh, if they're able to hang on to that spot, relying on Philadelphia to lose their game tonight. And then from there, it's kind of an even slate where the points are at with everybody. So we'll see what happens with the Islanders. They look like they're probably in good shape to make it. They do hold the third Metro divisional spot as of right now, but we'll see what happens. Still enough games there that they could find a way to blow it, and it's so hard to read this Islanders team as it has been all year. So we'll see what happens, but this week, pretty solid, up 4 spots to number 15. Number 14, a team moving down a spot, 2-2 on the week, 6-4-0 in their last 10 is Los Angeles. Los Angeles, not a bad week here. I don't think they're safely in a playoff spot. Just a matter of whether they make that last divisional spot or the second or first wild card spot, depending on what happens with Nashville. Either way, they're going to be playing a very, very good team. So not really all that important. I mean, obviously they'd rather have the divisional spot, but not going to matter much either way, and they're safely in the playoffs at this point. So we'll see what happens for LA over the stretch here. I don't expect them to go on any crazy run. I also don't expect them to go 0-4, 0-5, however many games they have left. So we'll see what happens for the Kings. It's been decent for them of late, and as a result, they do drop just because some other teams up higher are doing pretty good. One of those teams that's been a little bit better than them as of late, and it's a team that they're fighting with out west, is Winnipeg. Winnipeg 2-1 on the week, 4-5-1 in their last 10 is not great from them, but they're kind of recovering from this weird little slump that they've been on. And this week, of course, had a decent week in order to do that. Hopefully, they can continue to do that into the playoffs. Obviously, there's a history of teams that play well heading into the playoffs, continue to play well in the playoffs. The teams that are struggling heading into the playoffs tend to struggle a bit in the playoffs. So it would be good for the Jets if they continue to roll with this momentum through the end of the regular season to make sure that they are on point once they get in and probably play the Avalanche, which is going to be a crazy series. But this week, good enough to move up the 1 spot to number 13. Number 12, a team dropping 2 spots, and they've been in a weird little funk lately. It's Florida. 2-2 on the week. perfectly fine, right? But 3-6-1 in their last 10, and frankly, the teams in front of them just leapfrog them 2-2 at this point in the list. Not good enough to keep you in your spot, most likely. So Florida playing Boston today, which is a huge game. We'll see if they're able to overcome the big bad Bruins. But for this week, they dropped the 2 spots, kind of in a similar spot to Winnipeg, or at least as Winnipeg was last week, last 2 weeks, where they're not playing all that great. They would like to pick it back up before heading into the playoffs so that they're, on the right footing, headed in much like they were last year. So we'll see if Florida's able to do that this week, though, dropping 2 spots to number 12. Number 11, one of the two teams that leapfrog Florida is Vegas. Vegas, after their little snub over the last couple weeks, has looked a lot better. 7-2-1 in their last 10, 2-1 on the week. Doing this without Aiden Hill as well as some of the other names that, of course, are on LTIR because of course, it's Vegas. Nonetheless, looking pretty good heading into the playoffs. We'll see where they end up in this battle between them and LA, whether it will be the divisional spot or the wild card spot. Regardless, they're also going to be playing a very good team, whether it's option A or option B there. So good stuff from Vegas. They move up the 1 spot to 11. A similar story here for the team at number 10. That's Vancouver. Vancouver also doing pretty decently without Thatcher Demko, 2-1 on the week as well. Just 5-4-1 in their last 10, so not nearly as strong as Vegas has been. However, still pretty impressive to be able to get the results they're getting without a guy as important as Thatcher Demko. This is an interesting team for me heading into the playoffs. They don't have a ton of guys with a lot of experience, so one of the higher seeds that'll probably be on upset watch for me at least, but we'll see what happens for them over their last few regular season games and how they look heading into things in later April. So good stuff from Vancouver. They move up the 1 spot to number 10. Number 9 drops a spot despite a 2-1 week, and this is Toronto. The Leafs just a weird back and forth week. They beat Florida, and then they head into Tampa and have kind of a dud of a game against Tampa. I mean, they outchanced them, but was not able to finish. I know it's Vasilevsky, and he's looked a lot better lately, but just two entirely different Leaf teams in those two games. I don't think they're playing bad by any means. Obviously, still 2-1 and 5-4-1 in their last 10 as well. But just a little bit of a weird week for them. I didn't want to keep them in that top row, so they moved down the 1 spot to number 9. Part of the reason they dropped is because the team in front of them 3-0-0 on the week and 7-3 in their last 10, and that, of course, is Boston. Linus Ullmark has looked phenomenal lately. He will probably be the game 1 starter. Jim Montgomery has been quoted that he kind of learned from last year. It will likely be a rotation. For the Bruins in the playoffs, but we'll see what happens there. This team has looked very, very good, which is scary for whichever poor wild card team they're probably going to end up playing. But good for them, of course, to have finally found some consistency again after a latter half of the year that's been a little bit on and off. So good stuff from the Bruins. It was hard to move them up only the 1 spot, but the teams in this top row are all very, very good. So we'll see if they can keep it up and they'll continue to move. But for this week, 1 spot up to number 8. Number 7, a team that I had a bit of a hard time ranking. They've still been very good as of late, but a slower week from them after a really, really hot streak. And I felt like the teams in front of them deserved to stay in front of them. So dropping 4 spots, the Nashville Predators. The Preds, of course, went on that crazy point streak, the crazy winning streak comes to an end, and they have a couple rough games this week. And I just didn't feel like it was right to keep some of the teams that we'll see in the next few picks ahead of them. So we'll see if they can rebound next week. They're going to make the playoffs at this point, which, again, I'm going to be eating my words from these power rankings all year long because I said all year long I didn't think they were going to make it, yet here we are. So good stuff from Nashville. In that aspect, this week, though, wasn't the best from them. They do drop a few spots. We'll see if they rebound next week. Good news for them is their big guys are all still playing pretty well. UC Saros, Roman Yossi, Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, all still clicking right along. Just need the depth to kind of pick it back up, and the results will likely do the same for them. So 4 spots down this week for Nashville at number 7. Number 6 also dropping, but only 1 spot. 2-2 on the week is Colorado. This was a hard team to rank. They had a pretty decent week and then kind of got slammed by Edmonton at the end there. So not overly worried about them. Kind of just going through the motions at the end of the year. A little bit concerning with Mikko Rantanen getting hurt in that Edmonton game. We'll see what his timetable for returning is. It did not look like a comfortable play whatsoever. So hoping for the best for him and that he's back and ready to go. If not by game 1, at least in round 1 for the Avs. But Obviously, that's a massive piece for them. So we'll see what happens with Miko and the Avs team. Just again, kind of floating through the end of their year here. We'll see if they can clinch that number one spot in the Central. But Dallas looks pretty good right now, so it might be hard to do, especially without one of their bigger guys in Nico Randon. So this week drops one spot to number 6. Number 5, the team that beat them at the end of the week, the Edmonton Oilers, 2-1-1 on the week, also 6-3-1 in their last 10. That game at the end of the week was the battle for number 5. Of course, Edmonton won 6-2, so here they are. That happens often when two teams are right next to each other. And again, here we are. So Edmonton looking decent heading into the playoffs. I haven't been overly in love with the way they've been playing lately. Either that game against the Avs, obviously very impressive, but some of their losses have just not been all that great. So we'll see if they can kind of piece it together, play with some consistency. They need to keep things ratcheted down defensively. We know they can score. That's not going to be an issue for them. They just have to be able to keep the puck out of their own net, and they'll probably be pretty successful here heading in to the off. So we'll see what happens for the Oilers. They move up this week to number 5. Number 4, a team that has just been screaming up these power rankings, Tampa Bay. They're up to number 4. They were relatively recently in the 3rd row, I'm pretty sure. Or at least lower in the 2nd row. Now up at number 4, 3-1 on the week, and sneakily trying to catch up to Toronto for that final Atlantic Division spot. Much like the West, all the playoff teams this year, aside from that last team that's going to make it in the East, playing very, very good. So not going to matter for them whether it's Florida, Boston, the Rangers, or the Hurricanes. They're going to end up playing a good team. They're probably the scariest of all of these teams that are kind of like coming up into the divisional spots at the end of the year, whether it's Nashville, Los Angeles, Vegas. Tampa is definitely the team you want to catch last, especially if Vasilevsky's heating up, which he has been of late. So a little bit anxious for teams like Boston, Florida, New York, and Carolina if you do draw them because they've been so good and Vasilevsky's been so good of late. But we'll see what happens. Someone's going to draw the short straw, and it's going to be a really good series, whichever team that is. So Tampa has been very good. Also 8-1-1 in their last 10. I don't think I mentioned that when I first brought them up. So we move up 3 spots here to number 4. And then this top 3 is teams that have just been destroying everyone they play. Dallas 2-0-0 on the week, 8-2 in their last 10. I think they're probably going to end up winning this division. Colorado just has not looked nearly good enough to keep up with them, and they've looked fantastic. Jake Ottinger's been really good. Wedgwood, when called upon, has been fine. Like I said at the beginning of the year, this team has some of, if not the best depth in really all positions. Maybe not on their defense so much, but forwards and in net. 2 goalies that are perfectly fine. The forward lines, they can roll all 4, and it's not a problem. They get scoring from seemingly everywhere. And it's just really, really hard to keep up with them. So it's been more of that from Dallas. They've been very impressive, and they move up to 1 spot this week to number 3. Number 2, one of the final 2 Metro teams here. Same spot as last week. Carolina. No surprises here. Both these teams have been very good. Both these teams have played like number 1 teams in the NHL. But the team at number 1, of course, the New York Rangers, just slightly still edging them out of that 1 spot. I don't want to be the team in the playoffs playing either of these 2 teams. These guys are built for the playoffs, both of them. They both have good goalies when they're on their game. Their defense is both very deep, and they get scoring from a lot of places, much like Dallas. So good stuff from both of these teams. Again, they're kind of fighting for this number 1 spot. I don't think the Rangers are going to be giving it up. I think Carolina's just far enough back that they're probably going to finish second. They're going to draw a team like the Islanders, which wouldn't really want to see that series again after the way it went last year. I know it went 7 games, but really just wasn't all that exciting. So hopefully it's shifted and it's someone other than the Islanders, but we'll see what happens for them. Nonetheless, both these teams playing very, very well heading into the playoffs. You do not want to be the team that draws the straw to play against them. But again, 2 of the teams in the East are going to end up being there. So we'll see what happens for those 2 teams and for the Rangers and Hurricanes if they can continue to be the buzzsaws that they've been over the last month and a half, 2 months. So that's it for this one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. We are starting to solidify the playoff picture. I think we're up to like 8 or 9 teams that have clinched at this point. The West race is pretty much done. It's just a matter of where teams seed out. The East is still very, very interesting. So let me know which of those Eastern Conference teams in the 3rd row you think is going to sneak in. Are the Flyers giving up their spot? Will the Islanders give up their spot? Will a team like Washington or Detroit sneak back in? It's going to be a fascinating last 5 games for these teams. So Thanks as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe as well if you don't mind. It is free. We're creeping up on 250 subs, which is awesome. I really appreciate all the support, and we will talk to you guys later.